All right, everyone, welcome back in. We're back at it. There's Al with that awesome new background, upstate New York, Saratoga, with her lovely community member, Dottie Pepper. And I'd say, welcome, Dottie Pepper. That this would be our first sports media guest, but we had Michelle Tafoya on a little while ago. I'd say that this is one of our first pro athlete or pro sports, but we had Dean Oliver on. But first world champion. What we're welcoming into the body movement. And I know the praise is like whatever, but 2-time world champion, 17-time LPGA champ, and now with the CBS crew and the announcing crew. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for making time and supporting the upstate New York community.
Happy to do it. And you just went big time. I mean, with Michelle Tafoya, she's a rock star. So the bar's been set high.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, it's just funny how our little networks work. Al and you've connected just through happenstance and location and through each of your professions. And Michelle was one of my first, she got me into the sports business.
So cool.
Back when I was just, emailing people, hey, I want to work in sports. And Michelle was like, all right, let's talk, because we don't talk like that. So she gave me some guidance. This is how you network and all that stuff. So yeah, she's big time, but she's been on the sidelines. You're on the sidelines and you've been on the field. So you're going to offer a unique perspective we haven't had on the podcast. So we're excited to have you. And Al, I know you two go back a little bit through your professional endeavors. So be interesting to get that little intro before we kind of hop into everything Dottie has to offer us today.
Yeah, so it's funny you said that about Michelle, because I actually feel that way about you, Dottie. And one of our first bigger connections was when I was trying to break into treating golfers and treat the golf world. And right. I just said, hey, I'm interested in treating golfers and, asked you if you would offer some advice or, some information, and very quickly you were like, yes. And, met for coffee, and in those moments, as I'm hoping to get in for you from either a mentorship or a collaboration side, are never forgotten. And connections made via that with other great professionals in the area. So I'm eternally grateful for that, and grateful to have you in our community. So thank you so much for that and for coming on our podcast.
Well, happy to do it. And you both have brought up what I think is one of the most powerful words and relationships, because where would we be without mentors? I mean, I wouldn't have reached the places I have, whether it was on the golf course or in the world of sports media, without powerful mentors. And that's a connection and a network between. It has to happen, and I think that if you look at what we do, with a mantra of leave the world a little bit better place than you found it.
That's it.
Mentors have done that through you, and you continue to pass that on to that next generation following whatever their passion may be.
Yeah. I was very late to joining social media. I'm only still a couple years in, because I was
good for you.
It was good, but you know what? Like you have to, it's a new world. Like you can see that it has the power for good and evil. And yes. It's like, okay, you see how it can be toxic, but then you're like, right here, what we're doing, clip it up, share all the good little tidbits we think is important. Doesn't matter if it reaches 1 million people or 10. If it resonates with somebody, we're just trying to leave it a little bit better for someone. So
exactly,
it's these platforms. So again, thanks, but it's awesome, Al, that you two connected through what our core competency is in your profession of treating Ms. Pepper here with her, and helping Al establish everything she has in golf.
So Dottie, I think that what I would love to start with is, as you might know, I've purchased your book. You probably know that because you put it in the mail to me, I think. And
I did.
I know there's a personal note in there. And I want to get into kind of the process for book writing. Matt and I have talked about that for a long time, but more so some of the messages in your book that the mentorship side, I just like every time I've gone through it, I'm just number one in awe that both of you saved all these letters. Like that to me is, for somebody who things come in and papers come in all the time, I'm like, okay, I gotta sort through, but like how special, clearly your relationship was with your mentor. So just kind of that idea of saving things that really, mean something to you. And then like through your mentorship and friendship, how that developed you as an athlete. Like there's a couple things in there that stood out to me. And one was that, the idea of that kept coming up with if you don't love golf, don't continue playing. And
very much
that
so
to me is like my top thing that has stuck with me for today. And because I treat obviously a lot of athletes and a lot of people who are deeply involved with working out or sport, and they might not love it. And they're either being pressured to play or not taking time to do fun things like go skiing and break their hand because they're worried about playing,
right.
But I don't know if you get, to kind of touch on those pieces of like, number one, this deep relationship you had with your mentor, and then, into the youth sports of really loving what you do. I know that can go very deep, but
yeah. How much time are we on for?
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm starting with it because
well, that relationship may seem in today's world, whether it's because we communicate so much digitally, or just recycle stuff, or just bin it, get rid of it. It may seem a little bit archaic, but Mr. Pulver was a letter writer. He was a World War I soldier, and that's how they communicated anyway. And when he came home, he was a cub reporter at the Saratogian. So the written word, typed, written, however, and actually put in the mail with a stamp, or even hand delivered, was how people communicated. But it also created a physical bond because you had that letter to hang on to, and you make that choice whether you get rid of it, or that article that he had included that he thought was important for me to read and be able to. While our touch was golf, he really was more of a life coach, and there were life lessons that were sometimes very silently woven through the letters about resilience and preparation, the things that we know that it takes to become a successful professional athlete, or athlete in general, but also to really thrive as a human being. So he was way beyond just golf, and that relationship, that mentorship, was something that set me on a really good track.
Is that
and I think that's
is that something you find the best relationships come through when you're at the top of your profession? Like, you're going to get swing coach tips and performance tips and training tips, and it probably becomes just static white noise at some point, maybe, because you just need something externally, not directly related to the game, that makes it click a little bit better when you're out there.
Yeah, I think you can feed a student or a mentee out of the fire hose and just dump a bunch of stuff on them. And I think the best people that have received that are able to take what is best for them out of that flood of information. And all you can do is present information to people, and then it's their choice, obligation, however you want to put it, to sort of go through that library themselves and pick and choose what is best for them. And I think that's what Mr. Pulver tried to do with me. There were a few letters in there where he said, "Oh, I've become too wordy. I did exactly what I didn't want to do." But present it and let people pull from it. And he was really, really good about that. I think his thing too was that he knew how I would learn. So he didn't let me go through the golf magazines and read all the gut stuff about the mechanics that other people believe, because he didn't want to be unteaching what he had taught me, but he knew how I would best learn. And it was in the written word, and it was in our lessons weren't super long. He never watched me play a competitive round, but he took my feedback and continued to polish what he knew had to happen to turn the the progress
Yeah.
upward instead of being stagnant.
Yeah. It's I've been taking up boxing the past couple of years. Allison attended my first fight a couple months ago. I'm officially 0-1, so I'm not on my way to world champion
Yeah, but
status.
you lived to tell about it. That was good.
I live to tell about it. But I've been thinking about like boxing, golf, tennis, these individual sports. And like you just said, like mentors in those, especially in those areas, is a great blueprint. I think for everyone else, business world or whatever, it's like it's still on you to do it. So you have to be receptive to it. But it's the mentor that can kind of guide you along the way. And that's kind of Allison's role that she's been in healthcare. We have this weird dichotomy where I'm tough on patients. I'm like, healthcare system's kind of jacked up right now.
You think?
Right. A lot.
Yeah, a lot.
To the point that Allison has like left it. And so you have to accept that and take accountability. I'm talking to just average Joe and Jane. You got to do it yourself. But Allison's like, yeah, but my people could be better at showing you the way. And so her having those, so she's tough on her professionals. I'm trying to be more empathetic to people in the general population, because that's her role. But that's a weird dichotomy, and finding that through a mentor is that I feel like that delicate balance that probably amplified itself in your book of here's the way, but I can't do it for you.
Yeah, it's and at the same time, I think a lot of where we all are is that we battle our own perfectionism, and that becomes difficult too, because so oftentimes, like you're seeing in healthcare, the system is pretty jacked up. It's pretty broken, and we know it can be better, and it causes such frustration. And it's the same thing if you're a professional athlete. If you're trying to recover from injury, you want it to go faster, because I know I can push harder. Yeah. I can get there sooner. I can get there quicker. The doctor said 6 months. I think 4. That sort of stuff. And it's always a balance. There's such tension there, and trying to figure out that that's that cliche happy medium, but how you best perform without tearing your heart out, but still getting to where you need to be.
Yeah. Was there anything from Mr. Pulver, your mentor, in your book, Letters to a Future Champion? Was there anything that, like, was there a moment in those correspondences, like maybe when you were going through, like, maybe a not a rut, but like maybe a motivation, or there was, a certain point where you just weren't playing well, and you were just kind of rethinking the stuff, like one of those letters, one of those lessons, even if it was, in person, that kind of hit home, that amplified this, this theme we're kind of touching on?
Yeah, he talked a lot about just going back to the fundamentals. When you think you want to be too perfect, let's go back to the basics and address that. But he also talked about if you've done that and you're not feeling that you're getting the response that you need, you're not seeing the results, it's okay to push pause and go ski and go jump in the pool and go hit tennis balls and go hang with your friends for a little while. Go to the movies, do something that lets you reset here. And then a lot of times when that happens, your heart kind of gets reset too, because you realize you missed it.
Yeah.
So he was very
very like
big
for
on
me
that.
Reading that book, like that whole, and again, the intriguing part is just exactly what you said, like back to the foundations, and like how many things are that, like, and that was something that stuck with me through almost every letter that was in there, was the foundations, not just of golf, but of you taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, say hi to this person, tell everybody I'm thinking about them, like, taking care of your community, and that press pause piece that is so hard in today's world, right? I mean,
because we live in an instantaneous. Sure.
Oh, man. And the youth athletes I treat, like, just how much they're doing, and they're on 3 teams and they're over here, and then I'm talking to them and they're just like looking at me with eyes like this, and they're not even present because they're just tired.
No, they're just tired.
I just amazing to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that press pause was huge. Go ahead. Yeah.
I've been working with a youngster who's committed to play college golf at Notre Dame, and he has tremendous physical gifts, and he is super smart and super willing to learn. But one of those things about that foundation, he asked me, when things are starting to go awry, what did you do? And we talked about going back to the fundamentals in the golf situation. Is the club face aligned properly? Is your body aligned properly along that? You just kind of go through this checklist. But one of the other things we talked about was making sure your equipment is part of that checklist. So he went through a whole summer where he putted, he was blindfolded, to the point where it was starting to cause he was starting to feel like an explosion in his hands, and his confidence was gone. Speed control was vanishing quickly, confidence eroding, all of those things. And went back and checked the setup, the loft and lie on his putter. It was off by over 3 degrees.
Wow.
So if the basics of what you're trying to do aren't allowing you to do that, you go into this downward spiral. So part of that checklist has to be the physical foundations on lots of levels. And then if that doesn't respond, then we go to all right, let's press pause and just find out how much our heart really has, maybe not as much as it might need to be.
So many parallels.
I think so many parallels. So what you're really doing when you hit those foundational marks is controlling the things that you can control. I can control my setup. I can control my equipment. Yeah. I can't necessarily control the outcome, but I can control how I prepare to succeed.
Yep.
It's funny that's I'm thinking about like squats. Like people come in all the time and they're like, I can't squat. It hurts my knees. And I'm like, well, and I put something under their heels and they're like, well, that feels great. I'm like, okay, well, squat with a board under your heels.
Then do that.
Then don't stop squatting because you need that. But or like people are like, well, everybody's telling me to turn my toes in. I'm like, well, what happens when you turn my toes out? Well, it doesn't hurt then. Well,
then don't turn them in.
And it's just like those.
Yeah.
I love that idea because like sometimes we go like, or even taking the pause of the game, like make sure pause of whatever it is you're doing. Like, do people really need to stop going to CrossFit, or do they just need to put something under their heels or wear lifters and then they're better? Right. So like you can, like, I feel like, parallels again, like in the medical field, like so many times when people hurt exercising, people are like, well, just stop. It's like, well, no, like you don't just stop because that's not going to help you. Like modify or change, pivot or do something else. But okay, if you need a rest, what else, what else is there? But
so
the equipment, I like that. Check the equipment.
Yeah. So this kid didn't need to change his putting stroke because they're sitting there and they're doing all the diagnostics with high speed film, and the positions are all terrific. Yeah. He's done the things to eliminate the body movement that he needed to do. But when they looked at the putter, it was actually, in golf terms, there's a skid and roll coming off the putter face that is optimal.
Yep.
Well, he was essentially burying the ball into the turf. So it's hopping. And what you're trying to do is get this ball rolling. So then you start adjusting the way you make contact, which adjusts your speed. And when the speed's bad, it adjusts everything about your brain saying, oh, I'm a crappy putter. When in fact, it was just my putter wasn't set up properly.
Right.
The equipment itself wasn't set up for anything positive to happen.
Yeah, just going back to square one, and Al and I talk about that too. Just forget squatting. Like I'm a former personal trainer myself. People always come into me like looking for a program. I'm like, have you? And they're overweight and they haven't done anything. I was like, have you started walking? Like
exactly.
Have you made the time? Like forget the best program. They're asking me about cold plunges and saunas. I'm like, have you even dedicated 30 minutes a day to yourself to move? Start there, because that's the habit first.
Gosh,
once you start doing that,
true.
You unlock, okay, I've dedicated this time. Now I can start doing more than just walking. But people are coming to me and now Al all the time because we started this platform. Should I do this? Should I do that? And it's like, oh, hold on. Let's go back here. and then press forward.
Right.
And I think you probably see that still today on the course. How many of these guys, and I don't mean this disparagingly, will fall apart in the middle of a tournament, and can't get it back just like that. And it's probably the great ones that can just in between holes. And I don't know how they do it. Maybe you can explain it, but be like, geez, I just had a 3-hole run. Shit just got real. I'm off the leaderboard. And it's like,
Right.
how you like, what is going on upstairs? Maybe you can attest to it. In between a bad hole run, like, okay, hold on, deep breath, reset, lock it in, and then get it back on track.
Yeah. So when it does seem to go off the rails, everything starts spinning. It seems to speed up, and the best players hit that press pause faster and more complete than the others, and they have their own checklist. Let's go back, because we all have things that we fall back on.
Yeah.
Our bad moves. I mean, for me, I would get aim to the right, club face would come inside, and I'd have to hit the flip. The first thing you go back to is just, again, the boring basics.
Yeah.
But slow things down. If it means, and I think Mr. Pulver talked a little bit about this too, if you have to just walk a little bit slower, give yourself a chance to breathe.
Yeah.
And give yourself a chance to engage in that 1, 2, 3, 4. This has to happen for us to be able to do anything with any sort of success.
Yeah.
It's hard, but the best players hit that quiet time, that recheck faster and more efficient than everybody else who, lets it go for one more hole. Well, that's one more stroke. And what's the one stroke over the course of a season and all of that. So it's the players that can best adjust, because we don't even get up and feel the same every morning. Our sense in our hands and our feet, you can sleep a little funky, you got a bad email first thing in the morning. If something happens,
sure.
That, my mental set for the day isn't perfect. So how do we deal with it not being perfect?
Yeah.
And I think that's what everybody struggles with.
Yeah. Do you notice any, since you're out there with the greats right now, like the game is just so top heavy good, like 1 through 30.
Yeah.
Is there somebody like you see, like when you're following them on the course, like how they like a guy that does that reset really well, and something noticeable that you kind of pick up, whether it's a chat with a caddy, and kind of what those habits are, like just that little moment to themselves that you've seen?
Absolutely. And I think my time going to the range to watch these guys warm up is really valuable too, because you see a different rhythm. You see a pattern sometimes established for the day. You'll see guys that they've rushed to get there because something hasn't gone exactly how they want. The best players give themselves time to let the crap hit the fan.
Yeah.
And make those adjustments.
Yeah.
And the best players, they just sort of figure it out, that whatever they've got that day, that's what I'm going to have to play with. That's what I'm going to have to put pencil on that scorecard with. And then if we want to go dig a little deeper after we get done, that's when we'll do it. But they compartmentalize well, they let it go well, and then they deal with it when they're off the golf course in that time. So that's what the champions do better than anybody.
Anyone in particular kind of impress you with that, with their demeanor, their process, however they kind of, they're also
I'll use one. Yeah, I'll use one as an example. The Tiger did it better than anybody, I think, over the course of his entire career. He went with it, and he would talk about having his A game and when his feels were good and putting in reps and all the things that would become Tiger talk. Yeah, but I would use one. Watching Hideki Matsuyama at the Akron at the WGC event was probably in 20. They ended up winning, and I think he shot 61 or 62 on Sunday.
Not too shabby.
Honestly, and I said it on the air when I think we picked him up on the 6th hole or 5th hole or something. Yeah. And I actually said it on the air that he had not missed a shot since he pegged it at the 1st hole, but it was the worst warm-up literally I'd ever watched from a professional player. It was horrible. And he said the same thing when he went in and sat in the 18th tower with Jim Nantz. He thought, oh no, it was really bad. So the
Wow.
best players just, they kind of roll with it. And maybe that gives you, maybe you have to give yourself a little more margin that
Yeah.
I don't, in the golf terms, I don't fire at every flag today because I'm not clicking,
Yeah.
but maybe I'm going to putt it all right. I'm going to make everything. So I think you have to give yourself the, okay, I'm human
Yeah.
license as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder a little bit on the mental end. You know, I mean, there's you know, I'm big about talking about like team approach. I mean, TPI model, right? Like everybody's got their own little niche, and you know, sports psychology is a big, you know, thing now. And you know, over the years, obviously, I think that profession, as others has grown to help people with the mental preparation. And you know, you said one word to me like that you just said was compartmentalize. And I don't know. I feel like that's one of those things like I obviously things are trainable, but is that one you find people just have or don't? Or is there everything in the middle where people are working hard to like I'm somebody that can compartmentalize. You could tell me something and I can just be like, oh, great. I'll go over here and do my day, whether that's avoidance or whatever, you know, if you dug into me psychology, I don't know. But, you know, like I can let it go right then. And, oh, I'm having twins. Great. Well, the doctor's like, oh, you look better than anybody I ever see. I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Like that moment where he's like, oh, you look great. Like most people are a disaster when I come in this room. Like, oh no, I'm fine. You know, like it's fine. Like it's good. You know, there's a time to freak out, but
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, right. And then the ability to like, there's an ability to just like for me to shut things down where I know a lot of others, it's hard. Like their brains just get going and to stop them. And I always wonder that, you know, from myself, is it something we're born with, or is it something we teach? And obviously there's stuff in the middle, but obviously in golf, like that ability to move on, like,
yes,
you're dependent on necessary. You have to stop and move.
Well, it's necessary basically after every shot you hit.
Everyone.
There's nothing else you can do about it.
Yeah.
So I do think some people are wired for compartmentalizing things easier than others, but I also think it can be polished and added to, and you can acquire some of those skills. And sometimes it's as simple as making out a schedule for the day and having it. So these are the things that have to get done. And also realizing that there are some things that are going to happen in that day that I can't control.
Yeah. And
sometimes they'll throw me for a loop, but my best day is going to be when I can put them back in a place where I can then deal with it. We talk a lot about just getting things in order that you can control. So if I go to the golf course, for example, and I don't have my rain gear in the bag, just use that. And the weathermen, who frankly, I have a lot of very good friends that are meteorologists, but they get paid to be wrong. and if you don't have some sort of rain gear in your bag and some afternoon pop-ups happens and it catches you in the middle of the round, then bad on you. Those are the sort of things that preparation is really crappy, and you've set yourself up in a bad way. That's hard to compartmentalize.
Yeah.
So do yourself a favor through preparation, because it makes that other part easier.
Yeah, it's putting those things in the right boxes, but also situationally knowing when to call on them. Feels like it's like you just have to put yourselves in those situations sometimes, I guess, so that you get those reps, and so that when it does go off the rails, you can rely on all the other stuff, right? It's just
I've talked about with this kid I've been working with a little bit, like we're building our library. We're putting the books on the shelves that we can pull off and refer to later when the same sort of instance happens. So we've learned from what we've done. And Al, you're exactly right about, well, you found out you're pregnant with twins. What are you gonna do? Freak out about it, or are you gonna deal with it?
Right.
Yeah.
At this point, I can't control that.
Yeah. Leave the freaking out to me when I visit, you know.
Well, that's family. That's different.
Right.
But so here's an example. Over this past summer, I got stuck in the Detroit airport. I can't control that. A couple of knuckleheads didn't get us off the plane, couldn't open the door, flight was late,
Right.
missed the connection. Am I going to sit in the airport all day long and have all of this stuff flying at me in a really lousy, space? Or am I going to go to the Westin Airport Hotel and get a room for the day and have a meal and a nap and watch the show and do my homework so that I'm best prepared to handle getting on the next flight to Memphis, as it turned out,
Yeah.
and being ready to go on Saturday morning when we needed to be ready to go to cover that tournament. So it could have been a disaster, or, you put up a fight for a while and you're,
Right.
but figure out how to make that lemonade out of lemons, or however you want to turn it. But you give yourself the license to turn something pretty crummy into something positive. That is what you can control.
Yeah. Once you do it, once you do it, you learn to do it all the time, because it's so easy to just. We had Dan Go, CEO of like a fitness, high performance fitness for entrepreneurs, and he just said, look, at some point when I'm giving people diet tips, he's like, just say this to yourself, like late night snack eating chips or candy in the cupboard. He's like, I'm gonna eat like an adult. Just say that to yourself one time.
I like that.
I'm not a kid. I'm 40. I'm 30. I'm gonna eat like an adult. I'm gonna be a big boy, big girl. Just say that to yourself out loud one time, and then see if you move forward with that.
That's so good.
It was like, I was like, why is that so easy? But I've said that to
She
people.
wants to start in January.
Yeah, I don't want to start that when it's Christmas cookie time, please.
Well,
I'll start that statement January 1st.
Yeah, right. Well, listen, this is for people who are trying to get on track, else. But it's those little, but it's just doing that time and time again, because in that moment we're just so busy, we're so wired in, we're so looking at notifications that just feeling that angst. Oh, the flight was canceled, those idiots couldn't open the door. You could dwell on that. You could really just dwell on that because it feels good, and it's technically wrong.
One big thing what people don't realize is that a sympathetic response, everybody talks about sympathetic responses, right? It's, fight or flight. Well, there's a third one to that, and that's freeze. So it's flight, fight, or freeze. And I think it was the book Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. I think that's the book this was in. But they gave an example of a squirrel like in the middle of the road. Like, the squirrel's running. He doesn't, have a cortex, right? He's running across and he gets scared because he sees you and he freezes. So I think so many people are stuck in a sympathetic state of frozen versus flight or fight. Like they're just stuck. And so taking yourself out of that is very conscious, like a very conscious effort.
Yeah. So this might get me in trouble.
Nah,
but what did
this
so
is a
many
safe
people?
Place, Dottie.
What did so many people do during COVID? They froze.
No doubt.
No doubt.
Absolutely froze.
No doubt.
And we're still seeing them back into that pattern.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't even started to chip away at it.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. It's so scary, right? Everything was so scary for people, and fear, being fear driven in our culture is fear driven. Oh my God, don't miss out on this. Whether it's buying something, you're going to miss out on a sale and you're fearful, or it's health driven, like don't do this or do that. It's everything's so fear driven that of course our sympathetic response is so high, right? Now I could get down a rabbit hole and, back to why zebras don't get ulcers, our high stress all the time, which people might not realize that they're frozen, and that's stressful, leads to so many issues in our world that I'll stop there because I could go on.
And I think too, I have a friend that works in Washington, DC, and he's in this high stress political roller coaster, and you can get into those moments where you freeze. But also we'll talk about doing a little bit, just trying to make some good happen. His thought, and this has helped me a ton, is that if it can be done in 4 minutes or less, just do it. Take it off your list. Just do it. So you feel like you're moving forward. You're doing something positive. I had that happen earlier this week. I've got a list of things that are just very frustrating. I don't want to deal with a medical insurance. I don't want to deal with this. An Avis refund. So they're piling up. So what am I going to do? I'm going to sit there and do my foot therapy. And at the same time, I'm going to talk to Avis. I'm going to give it a process the problem that happened over the Thanksgiving holiday.
Yeah.
And whether it's multitasking or doing that 4-minute thing, if I can do it in 4 minutes, then get it off the list.
No doubt.
But it makes you feel like you're moving forward in a positive manner instead of freezing.
Yeah. Talk about, so I think you started this book during the COVID time.
I did.
Yeah.
And during the hard lockdown.
Yeah. And that's when me and Al decided to do the podcast too. Right. So it's like, I was like, we just can't be freezing. We got to do something. No. And
no.
Really the shutdowns and the lockdowns were great because I got so much thinking done. I was like, what can we do to, like, you know, kind of either bring people together or build a platform. So you went to work on the book. I'm curious, of all these lessons we've been talking about, golf and compartmentalizing and resilience and your mentorship. You've posted, you know, went through your gram. I see you did almost all this. I mean, I don't want to say by yourself because you gave shout outs to your team, but it was like a whole new of like, you're the publisher, you're the writer, you're the shipper. You know,
I was the distributor. I did
distributor, right? You did all this stuff. So a whole new set of skills, really, or tasks or things you never been burdened with. I'm sure getting into the media, even though you knew the sport when you got into broadcasting, a whole new thing with a person talking in your ear and when to shut up and when to let the moment and when to talk more, you know, or when to give a little insight or just let people know what's happening. How much of the golf and all of that translated into, one, your success in getting into media, and then two, learning all this brand new stuff, writing the book?
I would say almost every bit of what I learned about the book business had a parallel to being a singular athlete, because it was ownership of your own. So I reached out really through Mr. Pulver's daughter, Madeline, who spent her entire life in the media business. And I got the family permission actually a year before COVID hit. It's the idea had started to sort of percolate. It was sitting there.
Yeah.
It was sitting there, but who had the time? And I didn't in 2019.
Yeah.
But I did reach out to the family and say, hey, you know, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I have all of these letters that your dad wrote to me over the course of our 5.5, 6 years working so closely. And I think there's some really great gems in there. Would you be okay if I turned them into something that you can put in your hand? And they were all on board. Okay, great. So now how do you do that? Now, when we're sitting in there, and my thought was, and it sounds like it was the same for the two of you, I'm going to do something positive in a negative space. Mm-hmm. After March of 2020 came crashing down on all of us. Mm-hmm. And it was talking again back to her about, so how would I find a publisher? How do I make this happen? And she had a friend of hers that worked with a publisher in Traverse City, Michigan. He wrote a book about the Kent State riots. Yep. Complete no connection to sports whatsoever, but he had a really good experience with this particular publishing house. So she hooked me up with that guy. I wrote an email and I just explained the situation, and he took me just step by step, beginning with the process of, you're going to publish yourself, self-publish, or are you going to write the story and then take it to, your standard publishing house,
right?
In New York, wherever it might be, where you're going to lose the timing of when it is released. You're probably going to lose the personal part of the story because they're going to have a way that they think it's going to sell, and how it's going to fit in with who they are.
Yep.
You're probably not going to have control over the art anymore. You're going to hand this over to them, and they're going to send you on a book tour, and That's the way that's part of the business works.
Yep.
He said, or we can self-publish this. And then you have two options of how to make it happen as far as getting it onto paper. You can either print on demand, or you can send it to a real paper press. And my thought was always to go back, what would Mr. Pulver have wanted this to feel like? What would he wanted this to look like? What would the message want to be?
Yeah.
A very good friend of, it was a no-brainer. It was a lot more work, but I know that's what he would have picked.
Yep.
And the experiences that I've had over the course of these now coming up on 4 years, I think have helped other people that have reached out and said, what were the mistakes you made?
Yeah.
What were the things you would do differently? What were some of the really good things you did? Right down to where we printed, because I didn't want to get stuck in the international supply chain. We saw, we had cargo ships sitting that couldn't land in LA.
Yeah.
If I had been blessed with enough success with this book to go to a second printing, which I did, I didn't want them sitting in the Pacific Ocean somewhere. I wanted to have printed in the United States, where at least I could fight with a carrier that's an 18-wheeler.
Yeah. Right.
And if I got to go get those books somewhere, I can go do that. We learned about how to accept the supply chain challenges. I mean, the printing process in Southwest Missouri that summer went down the tubes because the Delta virus rolled through, and there were people that got sick and people died on those lines.
Yep.
And I'm trying to explain this to customers who are waiting for that second shipment. So those are all the things that I learned. That was like, I don't know, going to the first tee and you don't have all the clubs in your bag. You had no chance of doing what you were being asked to do. So what do? You explain it and move into that sort of space that was very uncomfortable, but it's something I think has helped other people as they've gone through their own sort of journey. I learned so much, but he would have been very embarrassed with the attention that it would have put on him, but very pleased with the lessons that were learned because he was always so curious.
I like I just love this new world of like direct to consumer, like just cutting out the suits. And I say that as a guy still in corporate America, it just like hurts my heart when I hear like that you were even considering. And I know you weren't, but like, here's the option. You can have all these people decide what your story is going to be. It's like this new world. It's like, and then how many people are interested? That's what it is. When you put it out, people are interested to be like, how did you do that? And then having you be willing, and that's probably another thing with a good mentor is like, you're receptive and responsive to those people, because a lot of people aren't. A lot of people are doing the smoke and mirror stuff, and they're flashy, and you reach out to them, they don't have the time for you. So that practical stuff, I know you can just Google it, but it's different when like you can Google everything. How do you do this? But like our podcast, one of my good friends was looking at our YouTube channel. He's like, dude, it's a Zoom meeting on YouTube. He's like, I'm going to make you a nice background. He just did it.
Yeah. Right.
He just did it for me. He's like, put this on. It's going to look professional. Your logo will be over here. The words over here. And now it looks so much like we know what we're doing, and we're still figuring it out. But, and of course I paid him, but he just did that out of nowhere. I was like, here, you deserve compensation for your time. But, it's having that relationship, even though you're taking on the burden. And
it's so true, because the designer, guy by the name of Martin Miller, who's based in Sacramento, has done a bunch of work with my husband in top level golf club stuff, literally all over the world. He got it. He understood what I was trying to do, and he went through this process, every letter, every photo, as I'm scanning things, and he's saying, well, we need this at this DPI so that I can turn this into and move it around the pages. And there was, I think there was one moment of angst through this whole process between the editor, myself, and Martin. And I had a book. It was a flower book, actually, that I loved the size of it. It was 8 by 10 by the name Aaron Benzakein, out on the West Coast, wrote this book, published this book. She did it in China, but the size of it and the structure of the cover, the size of the print, all of it was exactly what I wanted this to be. And the editor didn't like it. He thought it needed to be bigger because the reader would probably be a little bit older and they will want a font that is capable of being on that page a little bit bigger. And I said, nope, it's got to be of the quality that you want it on your cocktail table, but you can put it in the backpack. You can put it in your briefcase. You can take it on a plane.
Yeah.
And when it was all done, he said, we made the right decision.
I love it.
But
I love it.
It
It's
just,
yeah.
that was my one big pushback. And I was, nope, I can't do it. I can't
Yeah.
go bigger. I've got to have
very
it
unique.
this size.
You know, it is
It
very,
is unique.
like that. Now that you bring that up, like it is extremely unique compared to any book
Yeah.
that I have.
Yeah.
Like it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and something I love that there's a woman local who's also a local in this area who's has written books, and she gave me this term a little while, like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, is like, when you're done with whatever you're doing, it's not retirement, it's refirement. Like, find the next thing.
I love that.
Fills you. Oh, it's so good. You know, and so I just think about that because, you know, you think about, again, like wellness and, you know, all that of like keeping our minds fresh and keeping passion like in yourself, you know, as we move through things. And I mean, I think, you know, professional athletes are a great example. Like you get to, you know, in most sports, not necessarily, well, in a lot of sports, you get to 30 and you're done. Like it's like a very short career in most sports. And it's like, well, after that, what do we do? You know, and, you know, to our point, like, okay, like right now in my life, I see myself doing different things, but I will always be a physical therapist because I love it. Like I'm just you know, so driven, but there's other things that I want to do. So it's like this constant refirement underneath you versus stop what you're doing. Or if you can't do it anymore, just stop, you know, like keep after something that keeps you passionate. Keeps you really cool.
My situation, I mean, I can't play golf at the competitive level anymore, but I was still in that space.
Right.
When I was working this refirement, this is a great, this pulled up a great thought in my my little pea brain here about when I was working at ESPN. And you know, you'd go in as the experts supposedly in some sport, and they'd have this segment, and then they'd bring in another expert. Well, all those experts are sitting in the green room waiting for that segment to pop up, and we sit there and talk for a couple of hours because you're going to roll right through and you're going to go back in, but everybody's talking at the same time. And one of the things we talked about, especially with football players, was that short career time.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it? 3.5, 4 years, something like that, right?
If that.
If that.
Yep.
And there was an article written, and we talked. It was called "The First Death of an Athlete," and that first death is when you realize that you can't play at that level anymore. And at age 28 or 30 or whatever it is, you have an entire lifetime ahead of you, but it's not the lifetime that I've been dedicated to up to this point. And it's your choice about what do I do from here?
Yeah.
How do I find my passion? How do I share my gifts? How do I continue to grow as a person?
Yeah. I was a huge Magic Johnson Lakers guy growing up. So, and then it translated into Kobe and Shaq. And Kobe was writing those books and working on his business, not going out with the guys, knowing that he had this shelf life and still being that dude on the court. Like, but that mindset, I just like wired different, but if you can just channel all of us, 5% of that, I think that's where you find that refinement. And it's interesting. And that's, Al touched on it. I repurposed my question a little differently. It's like, you were at the top of the mountain, like world champion, major champs. And did you hit that moment during, like, towards the end of your playing career, or was it you had to take a few months, a year after you kind of hung it up to see, like, okay, next chapter, I'm ready? Did you more see it coming, or did you have to take a little reflection time after you hung it up?
I think my my pathway post playing career
Yeah.
was already set in motion by going to college and getting a 4-year degree and having a plan B. Whether so the end of my career was not, my playing career was not terrifying. In fact, it was actually because I was prepared to look elsewhere and had other interests, whether it be broadcasting, whether it, I still think there's an opportunity out there to build the perfect rain suit. And I'd like to be in on that.
Right.
I think there are voids in the market that I would like to be part of. But it wasn't completely terrifying. Granted, I had some financial security, so that wasn't part of the terror or the fear.
Yeah.
But I still need to keep doing beyond what I'm doing. It's purpose, exact purpose and passion.
Yeah.
So I think I had that exit from playing career sort of DNA in me, and just, this is not going to last forever. You're going to want to do other things. So what are those other things? So I was really, while I was very much focused on my playing career, I was also not blindfolded to what was going to be eventually happening someday.
Yeah.
Where I think a lot of people, especially kids, if you look about that youth sport, that they have specialized so early that there is nothing else. And that to me is terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole aspect of specialization.
That's a whole other podcast.
I mean, Allison's talked about the musculoskeletal. I didn't even think about it from that perspective, like the injuries and the burnout, but also the preparation for the rest of life of having multiple interests. And having prepared for a plan B when it eventually will run out, because it can't go forever. So that's
even as kids, like their identity. I mean, I work, half of my caseload is ACL injuries right now, and these girls, majority, obviously there's some guys as well, but they come in, not only are they injured and in pain, but their identity is stricken. Like they are the top athlete in their game, or this is what they do all year round. They're a soccer player all year round, and now they're out. And that mental toll, without having that diverse, background, where it's hard. And as like a mom of 3 little kids right now, it's hard to develop that diversity, I think, because there's so much pressure into specializing. And I'm like, hands down, like I just pull out crafts and like, here, draw, like go do this.
Yes.
Let's go here, let's go there. And but there's a guilt these days of feeling behind. Like, okay, well, if I don't have them in this program and everybody's doing these travel programs and my kids are just playing with water jugs on top of a wiffle ball bat, like, I feel
your
cool
patience in that area
but I feel guilty because they're not in that. And so it's a real, I think having that diversity is very interesting and not happening well these days.
No, it's not happening well, and it translates poorly into sports if that dream doesn't happen, but it also translates to real life when, well, who am I?
Right.
And what makes me happy? What makes me a good listener? What makes me, a person who's additive to society? When I've been in this box and not allowed to even push the walls out a little bit.
Well, isn't it, you might know this stat better than I, but I know there's a pretty significant stat on those that are professional golfers of how diverse of athletes they actually are. Number one, of like how many sports they did play growing up, which is interesting because I do feel even locally, like in the golf space, like once we're going, we're going golfing versus like building this diversification. The other is, there's what is the name of the book? But there's a book that compares Tiger and Federer about their upbringing. Matt, you've talked about this book.
You love that, how Tiger was a prodigy, specialized, and Federer was very late.
People who specialize get like all this attention, where like Federer didn't specialize in tennis till he was like almost 15. And he had this very diverse background of movement and exercise. And, at some point to specialize, yes, you have to dive in, but in youth sports, we know that the dangers of injury, I don't think it's researched yet on the mental health side, although there is a lot about burnout out there, about specialization, is not to do that till you're 15, not even to dive into that to your
When you look at the length of Federer's career in a more taxing sport, and all the injuries Tiger had in a less demanding sport, there could be an argument there, even at that level.
I think there could be. I mean, Tiger trained and continues to train like a maniac, but and the ground does hit back. I mean, if you're going to hit that many golf balls, the ground is eventually going to hit back,
no doubt.
But yes, you're right. Of some of the best, and they're athletes on the PGA Tour, played other sports and continue to play other sports. I wouldn't want to play Scotty Scheffler on the pickleball court right now. It's become their outlet, and it's fun because it's bilateral. It's not just from one side. Tiger actually did ski a little bit, but David Duval was a heck of a skier. Davis Love spent a lot of time skiing. Mickelson did. Jordan Spieth pitched. I mean, until pretty late in high school. There were other
Rory and Colin Morikawa could ball out, I think, right?
Yes. So Max Homa. I mean, they all did different things,
right?
And I think it's healthy from a physical standpoint, but certainly also from a mental standpoint too.
Yeah, even the greats in something they love and have purpose need that recovery time. We talk about that all the time with people exercising. Yeah.
Jack Nicklaus played a ton of tennis.
Range is the name of the book I was referring to, with David Epstein. Just talks about having that, and we talk about that in the health space too, is being able to identify everything. And yes, you can specialize, but there's not a lot of generalists in general in medicine, life, all of that. So interesting.
Right.
Well, listen, I know we're reaching the end of the time. I missed the opportunity with Michelle Tafoya. I just wanted her quick insights on working with the great Al Michaels. And I forgot to ask her because our conversation went in so many different ways. Dottie, you work with, and as a child of the 80s, grew up in the 90s, Jim Nantz and Verne Lunquidst. Let's just take a left turn and just talk how, just having their voice come out of the TV on a Sunday, a Saturday, no matter what the sport is, it feels bigger when you have a viewing party. Just working with those guys, professionalism, their level of prep, anything that translates from all this stuff we talked about. How cool is it working? And then how much more respect for the media side did being a player be they're just talking. So I'm going to throw another name. I'm going to throw another name in there for you that I know Michelle Tafoya has had good working relationship with too, and that's Mike Tirico. And Tirico is one of my mentors. He actually wrote the afterword in the book, and it was the first time he'd ever done anything like that. Shocking to me when I asked him to do it, and we were both crying by the end of the conversation. Oh my god!
but he was a very very big supporter of mine. Someone I still will pick up the phone, and if I have a question, but the way he prepares, he does have I would say it's completely photographic memory, but borderline photographic. Mine tends to be the same. If I write it, I see it. It's emblazoned. I got it. But the way he prepared, it was when I won my second major championship, it was Mike's first time doing LPGA golf. And after the third round, I was asked to come sit in the booth and do a little bit of interview time. And I was totally struck by the way he prepared and how thorough it was. Understanding it was the first time he'd ever done it. But as I've gotten to know Mike more, he does that the same no matter what the sport is or if he's been doing it for 30 years. It's always the same level of preparation, intensity, respect for the sport, respect for the athletes. And that definitely left a mark on me. Listening to, and Jim is much the same way. Jim Nantz is much the same way because he sees things. They're emblazoned. They come out at right time, in the right tone, with the right respect for the situation. And then they're flushed. It's amazing how these guys can just take that information, deliver it, and flush what's not necessary, but keep the little bits that really might be valuable down the road.
Important. I talk about that in business all the time. We're inundated with metrics and reach and likes and stuff, even on the business side. And it's just like, you got to cut 90% of that noise. And here's what matters to everyone else. It sounds like those guys are just the masters at that.
Yeah. And Verne, I mean, I don't think there's any better storyteller that's ever come through, certainly American sports, maybe all of television. But he treats everybody around him as if they're family. Now he can get burning hot when something really goes against what he believes in his principles. But Verne treats everybody like everybody would always want to be treated, and he's always so happy to lend an ear, give a little bit of advice, and he always, if you listen to Verne, he uses his voice as an instrument. There's always the right emphasis in just the right spot. There's the right excitement when it really matters, and there's just everything's just always on point.
I was gonna say his acoustics.
Yes.
Like it's like a Barry White or whatever. Like it's his voice and his way of using it is just it's amazing. So I would love to cigar cardigan and just go Verne, can you just talk for 60 minutes straight without me piping in one time?
So one of my favorites, so he's now our roommate at the Masters. So it's Bill Kratzer, myself, Nancy and Verne, and my husband David, and we shared the house. And last year, as you know, the weather was terrible at the Masters. Right. And Saturday play was suspended kind of middle of the afternoon. Yep. And we rolled in the tape that we'd laid down from when the round started, so we had something to go live in that window. But what we did was we went home to the house and we replayed the 1986 Masters when Nicklaus won at age 46, I think it was. Yeah. And we let Verne do the whole show. We turned the volume completely down, and we
wanted karaoke night.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we wanted Verne to tell the story of just the other things that were going on as Nicklaus was making this move from, kind of the depths of his career where no one expected him to win to all of a sudden walking away with the green jacket on Sunday. And it was absolutely phenomenal. We just sat there on the couch and listened to Verne.
That's all. That's it, man. That's like that'd be like a little. If I ever had like a Make-A-Wish, if they're like, "Hey Matt, you got 30 days on the clock," I'm like, let's put Verne somewhere on that top 10 list.
Funny.
Amazing.
So,
all right.
So this past year, he called me. Let me finish by saying, but this past year, he called his golf in the last 2 years actually from inside the broadcast center. Because when you sit in those towers, you're literally walking up ladders to sit in the towers above the greens on the back second nine at Augusta National. So Verne has been forever. Well, I don't know what year he took over at 16, but he's been at 16, and it is a significant hike up that ladder. Well, Verne's back. I mean, he's had major surgeries and not terrific to be up there. So his goal for this year is to be healthy enough to walk up that ladder and call live from the 16th.
I know a girl if he needs an outside opinion.
We know a girl.
That's fun. I was going to say, there is a piece to also having your voice on the screens in our house when everything is going. We, you're just awesome. And I love that.
Well, thank you.
I mean, just knowing how good of a person you are and the help you give others, our community here in Saratoga so much. I just feel this was the right time to say thank you for that, because I just love following you.
Honor.
I love watching what you're doing. I will get down to the 9/11 memorial with you one of these years when my life is there, because there's so much good going on. I mean, my thank you for being here, so much, and you mean a lot to me. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a great. I have nothing to say here. I have nothing to add to that. So,
was that the first time in your life you've had nothing to say?
I think so.
Allison would say that, but
Very funny.
As I grow older here and wiser, I learn when this is her moment, and I know she's super appreciative of you. So,
Well, thank you.
and I'm just honored to be a part of a great friendship and professional relationship. So, thanks for letting me be a fly on the wall and ask you some pointed questions
this was
on
very
this.
cool. Loved it.
Letters to a Future Champion, George Pulver, and Dottie Pepper. Great story. I've been diving into the book myself. Allison's obviously finished it and made me aware of it. Really honored to have you. Appreciate the time. Everyone can like and subscribe down below. We'll see you on the next episode, and take care. Thanks, Dottie.
Thanks for the invite.